Scoundrels web series and podcast is filmed and recorded in their ship, the Centurion Vulture, and may contain language not suitable for all. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to Scoundrels, y'all. We are broadcasting from the Centurion Vulture. I am CG.
I am Paul Bannister.
Curtis Wayne Millard standing by.
We are three grown-ass men gathered to talk about Star Wars as always. You all know why we're here. Ahsoka has begun. It aired last night. We all watched.
Ooh, did it.
Curtis, word on the street is you gotta rewind for us, dog.
Scoundrels Rewind.
Yeah, man, I put some shit together. I've had enough hard Mountain Dew to pull the fucking ears off a Gundar. So let's I'm just joking, man. Let's jump into this shit. Ahsoka, episode 1. It's called The Master and the Apprentice. We begin with an ominous red crawl. Ex-Imperials are out looking for Grand Admiral Thrawn. 9 Star Wars movies have been made and neither Thrawn nor Ahsoka's name has been mentioned even once, but we are optimistic nonetheless. 2 rogue cat dudes with Jedi training board a Republic ship, raise all kinds of hell, and break a prisoner out. We catch up with Ahsoka doing some Indiana Jones type shit to find a map. The bad guys turn up, they are droids, and they get their asses whooped by Ahsoka. Ahsoka returns to the Rebels/Republic ship and learns that these rogue Jedi cats are out and about. In a nutshell, everyone is basically looking for this Grand Admiral Thrawn fucker. The map can also possibly lead to this dude named Ezra. But it looks like the map is not straightforward, so this green chick suggests that Ahsoka seek help from her friend named Sabine. So correct me if I'm wrong, we're up to like 4 characters already, and you are basically clueless if you haven't watched the Rebels cartoon. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Correct.
We meet Sabine, and it is made clear that she's a wild rebel and doesn't follow the rules. Sabine is into space cats, graffiti, loud music, colored hair, and she also misses her friend Ezra. Ahsoka heads to recruit Sabine, and the bad guys are there too. Sabine wants to take this map home. Ahsoka says no. Sabine says fuck it, steals it anyway. Sabine does figure out the map, but at that moment the bad guys turn up and she gets hit fucking gutted with a lightsaber. On to episode 2. That one's called Toil and Trouble. It's okay, apparently lightsabers don't kill anyone unless you can act. Rest in peace, Qui-Gon Jinn. Sabine, so fucking like, no one gets a lightsaber like an ineffective tool to kill someone in Star Wars now? Sabine is injured, the bad guys have the map, and Ahsoka runs off to sort this shit out. She brings back a droid head and Sabine taps into it, and they figure out that the droid is from Corellia. Bad guys roll up on the Stonehead situation and figure out where Thrawn is because they have the map. On Corellia, things get a little squirrely. Actually, they're really squirrely. Ahsoka gets into a lightsaber fight and the green chick gets into a dog fight. And my main man Chopper, the astromech droid, managed to hit the bad guys with a tracking device. Oh yeah, in case you didn't know it, Sabine is a Mandalorian. The adventure continues and fucking scene. Holy shit. All right, gotta knock the dust off, y'all. It's been a minute.
No.
We're here though.
You did
Wasn't
good.
too bad.
I like it.
Man.
It's a lot to do. It's 2 episodes and a whole new
2
series.
episodes. Yeah, we're only going to do one
It's a
from
lot
now
to
on.
take in. It's a lot going on. I mean, that's what 2 hours of. It's basically.
There's a lot going on, dude, and I thought of Paul the entire fucking time.
Me
'cause
too.
He has not
That was my
seen
thought. I
a
was
single
like,
episode
shit.
of Rebels.
I mean,
I was like, if you haven't seen Rebels, then like,
who wants
how did you feel?
start?
I kind of want to know how you feel because
I'll be honest.
Yeah.
All right, I'll tell you. Well, the short answer is I'm glad we're doing this episode now. To be clear for those that are watching, literally the 3 of us have not had one word or even a text about it except till this very moment, which I think is good.
Yeah, we haven't said shit.
The short version is, I was like, it could have been worse, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
It could have
I'm
been
not
worse.
mad.
I was nervous as fuck. We talked about that in the last episode. I don't really know yet, but I'm not totally bummed, which is, for what it's worth, with the level of apprehension I had going into it, I'm a little, I don't know if I'm ready to say pleasantly surprised, but I'm not walking out like, fuck.
Right.
Yeah.
I gotta go watch this.
You are correct. This feels, what it feels like the most is I just turned on season 3 of a show and I just missed the first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
That much is, I think, objectively true. Now, what does it mean that
I don't think they're even trying to.
I don't think so either. I don't know.
They fully expect you.
Yeah.
It's hard to know until the season plays out how much of what they'll fill in over time with more backstory, to where maybe in the first 2 episodes it's especially overwhelming because it's new characters and environments and all the things.
Yeah.
And you know, I will say this. There are things about it that definitely don't suck. That could have sucked.
Oh, hell
that
yeah.
I was bracing for suckage in a handful of distinct areas. And I will say that if I take it in different isolated components of it, I'm not mad. First thing,
there's only
the
one
music
thing that I
is
don't
not amazing, and it's clearly trying its best to be John Williams. However, I will say this is the first time, and I don't know if this is good or bad yet. I think time will have to tell. I think this is the first time they sat down and made an effort to just make something that feels and sounds like a Star Wars score, knowing full well you can't have Michael Jordan doing the score. You're never going to get John Williams, so trying is going to be kind of a bad exercise. But
music's not amazing.
They're trying, though. I will say, like,
well, it's the guy who does the he did the Rebels music, and the music in Rebels is is pretty. It's not great, but it's in the same ballpark, or trying at least trying to.
It's doing the flourishes where we would expect a flourish to be in the emotional scenes. You can hear a string swell happen in a way that, quite frankly, took me a minute to adjust to in The Mandalorian. Whereas we talk a lot about how the first 2 Mandalorians felt more like Star Wars. I feel that way up until the music. Now, I'm not mad at the
Mandalorian music took me a lot to get used to.
Correct. And they just made a different choice. And I think in the end, ultimately, it's kind of unique and gives it its own characteristic and flavor, and I think they did a pretty good job with it. But I would say the music in The Mandalorian, not just in the specific melodies, but the ways in which it's implemented, doesn't feel like Star Wars. It didn't feel like the music was a main character, whereas in this one, the music is heavy-handed. It is very... It is very present. It's driving a lot of the emotion and the dynamics of the editing and the storytelling. And while it's obviously not as good, not even fucking close, it did feel like, okay, they're trying to make it feel like a fucking Star Wars vibe.
It's like that way in Rebels, because it's like the music is pretty heavy in Rebels too.
They actually used the John Williams themes in Rebels, believe it or not, Paul, the actual cartoon.
Well, then why the fuck aren't they using him here?
Yeah.
I don't fucking know, man. You got to call your boys.
Because I'll be honest, the music wasn't perfect, but if they could have just used the same melodies with what they did right here, if they could have cued the original Star Wars or Force themes in a few places, like, for example, when some of those memorable... The space fights, or even just like there are some moments where Ahsoka is talking in a serious way. If there was a way to like bring in hints of the emotional Force theme in there when she's talking,
or when they mention Anakin, throw in
when they mention Anakin, correct,
a little bit of a slow Imperial march.
Again, it's got to be a rights issue, right? It just has to be
at this
a rights
point,
issue.
Yeah, because honestly,
Filoni would
you wouldn't
totally
even have
use it.
Yeah, he would use it, and also it'd just be easier.
No
one. I mean, they're probably like, not
say
trying
what
to
you
make
will
their
about
lives more difficult.
Filoni. He clearly understands how important the music is to Star Wars, and I would say that this being the first thing he's written and directed on his own, the way in which the music is being used is clearly representative of a guy who understands. He, like, to his credit, he's trying as best he can to make it feel like big present Star Wars music, and I will genuinely commend the effort. They're not killing it, but I appreciate that they're at least trying to make it feel like Star Wars in that way. And so there was like flashes where I was like, well, I don't think that they're really crushing it, but I do appreciate that they're trying. Things that could have sucked, that didn't. to be honest with you, it is clear that there's all kinds of backstory that I don't fucking understand. But to my same point...
I don't either.
But to my same point that I made before about the Solo movie in the last episode and my apprehension about Lando, like going back to these existing characters seems like it's rife with danger. If the Rebels didn't exist and this just came on this way, I am a little bit interested in some of the dynamics.
Yeah.
I will say that, again, it's too soon to know whether or not I'm going to really get the full level of emotional investment I need, but I'm not totally uninterested. I'm mostly just like,
yeah.
So what is this? How do they know each other? Okay, they said this, so that implies XYZ. That can still work, I guess is my point. In the first 2 episodes, it's clear that anyone who watched Rebels has multiple layers that I don't have to this. But again, they did do enough mentions with weight associated with them that it's clear what you're supposed to think. And it did make me wonder about that comment I made before, where there is a scenario that I think is still possible 2 episodes in, which is good, by the way, because I think there's a version of this where at 2 episodes in, you're like, no fucking way, that's never going to work, which is that for the people like me who were skeptical and have never watched a minute of the cartoons, there's a scenario that actually works in our favor. Because if they continue to do enough pointed flashbacks that carry emotional weight over the next 2, 3, 4 episodes to fill in all those blanks, and they don't just assume that you're going to go back, and they make an active effort for people like me to catch up to the emotional weight, I got to tell you, it could work. It genuinely could work. There were so many things that as the scene started, I was like, oh, fuck. And by the end of it, I was like, well, for example, when she's taking off on the speeder bike for the first time when she's supposed to be giving her speech, and it's like a weird Star Wars punk rock thing going on, and that scene starts, and I'm like, oh no, what are they doing?
It felt a lot like the first Star Trek 2009 that J.J. Abrams.
Yeah. Beastie Boys. Yeah.
Yeah,
like the Beastie Boys moment.
It probably was an homage, honestly.
It could have been. And the scene started, and I was like, oh no, this is bad. But by the time it was all done, it kind of worked for me. It wasn't as bad as I thought it could have been.
You got a good taste of who Sabine is in that moment, because she is that in Rebels. She doesn't give two shits.
But it was even just the vibe of using non-score music and doing all that. I was like, this is a bold
part
choice.
Took me out of it.
Yeah, it took me out of it too, but by the end of it, I kind of came around a little bit. Or let's put it this way, I didn't leave that scene thinking, strike one.
Right.
And when it came on screen, I was like, oh no.
Yeah,
and by the end
exactly. I was like, oh, this song.
Okay,
it's so weird.
I'm not stoked.
Imagine writing a Star Wars song like that. It's like make it punk rock, but just speak some gibberish. So it's some
surprisingly not terrible considering the choice they made in that moment.
Yeah.
So, and I guess I could go through the whole episode. There's a lot of these things that could have been really, really bad, and they weren't all bad. So I guess. You can hear it in my voice. I was expecting to be super bummed. So I guess compared to how fearful I was going in, I gotta say, maybe more of a win than I expected.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Funny.
I am, but I will. My only last qualifier before I'll stop monologuing and let you guys get into it is
monologue.
It is requiring a mental exercise. An active effort on my part to let go of cynicism and things that I want it to be. And if I stop making that extra effort, it will become difficult for me. But so far, they're giving me enough good to where it feels worth it for me to make the exercise in trying to let go of my preconceived notions. Like, for example, by the end of the 2 episodes, I was like, look, I don't know anything about these characters. Some of them look a little wonky. But I am kind of interested in it's proving the thing that I've said before for myself, which is that I am more interested in new characters in the Star Wars universe to be written. That's why the John Watts series is more appealing to me. I don't want to go do a Lando series, more Han Solo when he was young. That's dangerous ground. I don't know how much more CG Luke Skywalker I want to see. I'm more interested in what you can do with new characters, because for me, for all the failings of the sequel trilogy, Rey was an interesting character. Finn and Poe were interesting characters. We can bitch all day long about what they ended up doing with their characters, but the existence of those characters, I was interested in. at the beginning.
Yeah.
The way they were introduced and the premise surrounding them in the world of Star Wars, I was totally down for, and it's because you don't have your own baggage. And that's my point, where I might end up being pleasantly surprised with this because I didn't watch fucking Rebels. I don't have baggage about, well, this is not what Sabine's supposed to be like, or that's not consistent with what they said in this. I'm just coming at it at face value for new stories and characters in the Star Wars world. And while there's a part of me that wants to get defensive, when it was all said and done, if I'm really honest, I am more interested in seeing what happens in the next episode than I was for even the second episode of season 3 of The Mandalorian.
Yeah, they handled this way better than the last season of Mando.
So I guess my point is, I am not saying I think it fucking rules yet, but I am pleasantly surprised. I am actively engaged. I am interested in seeing what happens next. There's enough good being laid that if they stick with this, I could get on board. I could get on board. I don't know. What did you guys think?
Well, I think that's the big test is
get into it, Chris.
I'm excited to see what's happening, and then I actually had to make a pros and cons list because I had to turn off
Bring out the list,
cynicism.
pussy.
I had to turn off okay, because like we say, this timeline is a crazy situation.
Yeah,
because if you look into it, who the number one stunners of this timeline would be Luke, Leia, Lando, Chewie.
Oh yeah, I forget. All these assholes are alive, aren't they?
In this time period, not only are they alive, they're in charge.
Like Han Solo still has tight pants on.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Han Solo's still but I had to turn that up because it's like,
those are good pants.
One of my thoughts was well, are we going to see Luke, Leia, Lando, Chewie, Akbar, Solo? Because they're top dogs. This is after Return of the Jedi. Even look at the sequel trilogy. Leia's like the total top. Nothing gets past her.
How come Homegirl, Green Girl, I don't even know the character's name, and I just watched 2 episodes.
But
what's her name?
I don't know her name. I forget her name.
Whoever that is, she's obviously like the Poe Dameron type of the new gang, right? She's the non-force badass, general type. Your point is really well made, but it's interesting because subconsciously, because I wanted to like it, I immediately placed this on a different side of the galaxy. But you're right. Even hearing you say that made me go oh yeah, what the fuck?
I have to turn that off. I have to, because if I don't, I will drive myself insane, because that's the reality of the situation is what's so funny is like Curtis said, 9 movies, we haven't heard of these cats once.
Well, and now Thrawn is such a badass, and apparently
so what's going to happen?
Wouldn't Luke kind of be a little interested?
Ahsoka is not even in comparative the rebel standpoint of where they are. She's a nobody, because she was nowhere to be seen during the actual rebellion. Luke is the Jedi that should be making all the decisions because he's apparently the only one at the end of Return of the Jedi. And this is pretty close to after. I'm trying to think of where we are. How far after Return of the Jedi are we in this?
That's a good question. How far out are we on this?
Yeah, I would like to know that. But I'm with you, Paul. I enjoyed it. It's obviously made by a super fan. Filoni is obviously a super fan, and it's definitely made.
He is a fucking fan. One love.
And it is super bright. I think it's actually trying to mimic a cartoon type lighting. Yeah. I think that's very intentional. The CGI isn't very good.
It is. I almost think
that's intentional to almost make it kind of look similar to the prequels.
Because it's one of my comments.
It was I was like, this is weird. It's almost like I've seen Mando and all these things. Why does this look like it almost matches the CGI of the prequels?
It is elevated prequels in its visual vibe. Yeah. Now, again, emphasis on elevated. And I kept having those moments of fuck, it smells and looks a little prequel-y. But
I thought the ships looked great, though.
Yeah, it's clearly better than the prequels. And then it's
clearly better.
You, at one point, were stoked on the idea of the prequels. Maybe if you get over yourself, leave space, maybe this can become what the prequels could have been to you. And you're right. It takes a lot of mental kung fu to detach all of the baggage that I'm bringing to this.
Yeah.
Yes.
You got our childhood wrapped up in this shit.
Yeah, I think that's the point. It's like I have to turn off if this is going on, then what's happening here? But again, it's like the lightsaber battles were cool. Balin is so like I love that actor. I'm a big
he's good.
fan
He was
of
on
bang 'em
Rome.
up,
Did you
shoot
see
'em up
Rome?
movies? Well, I grew up with like Rambo and Commando.
Yeah.
He played Punisher in Punisher Warzone, and if you like bang 'em up, shoot 'em up movies, that's probably my top 5 like just good killing action movies. And he's just a badass. You can tell they're more. I love the approach on those two because it's very much more Jedi than Sith. Especially when she went to fight Sabine. Notice how she didn't attack first.
Yeah.
Mostly the Sith is always like attack. She was just kind of like, "Are you going to come to me?" I felt like her fighting style was more Jedi than it was Sith.
Well, you can tell You can tell that those dudes are torn, right? Especially towards the very end, where they were like, "It would be a shame if we killed this Ahsoka character."
Yeah.
So
truth.
Those cats are probably going to end up being good guys, huh?
Yeah, how did you
maybe.
guys feel about that? Because that was interesting, because they did explain one of the things we were asking about how are they going to justify that there's all these fucking Jedi flying around? And it turns out, from what I pulled from it, and I guess this is kind of my question, if you guys gathered the same thing, that there's not a bunch. It's really just the ones they're showing us. It's these two.
They hammered that home, which was
this
good.
guy was another remnant from Order 66, somehow didn't get killed during the Jedi Purge, and he's probably been laying low. And then somewhere through disillusionment or whatever, turned bad, which that doesn't hurt my feelings. If you were like a Jedi,
he's kind of like a
thing.
mercenary right now.
Yeah, and then it would be understand how he gets seduced into like a regaining of power or whatever, and then obviously he gathered a learner, a Padawan at some point. Like that I can wrap my head around, and the idea that Ahsoka and then Sabine was somebody she was training. Like if what we're seeing, these 4 Force users are in theory now the full extent left.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the implication.
I know Luke. Well, according to the sequels, Luke was out starting to train new Jedi. That was the whole thing in the prequels. Right. Like he started a whole new temple and all that.
That's right.
But I did like how they hammered that home. Like Ahsoka said, it's like there's not many that can actually wield the Force these days. And so I'm glad he did. Yeah, and poor I'm glad you said it's like, why is it that Qui-Gon Jinn is the only person that can't survive
He'd be the one dude I
stomach.
would kind of be like to have around.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good question. At this point, is he literally the only main character, good guy that did not survive a lightsaber attack?
Just can't handle it.
Obi-Wan Kenobi did technically get killed by a lightsaber, but it was a part of his plan, I think, because he disappeared into the
that's the argument.
The
he didn't have a wound
and became
Yeah.
Like
Han Solo
dude.
died with it through the stomach, but then he also fell off the thing. So that's double trouble.
By all the Star Wars standards, a lightsaber and falling down a shaft is not necessarily death.
Since when is falling down massive chasms a
Maul got
sentence?
chopped in half and fell down a shaft. That's like
It would have been great if they kept Maul around for Revenge of the Sith. Honestly, man.
He was cool.
There's a version of that scene where Sabine takes the saber through the gut. Like they could make her wounded seriously enough to let the bad guy get away. Like they don't
chop her arm off. That'd be cool.
That would have been a cool ending to the first episode if we didn't absolutely know that she was totally going to survive that. Yeah. Like if we had no
at this point,
preconceived notions. Yeah, that
remember
actually
in
probably would have
Obi-Wan
been a
where that chick
badass
got
move.
like 2 minutes later she was out like fine.
Yeah. That
The
would have been
Inquisitor
actually.
and Obi-Wan?
I would have respected that power move if they were like, let's just kill off one of these rebel characters first episode.
I know. Well, for a minute I was like,
that would have been badass.
For it?
That would have been. I would have been like, "Oh shit, Filoni!" But but knowing from the trailers we've seen that's obviously not.
He would have pulled a Game of Thrones on her ass.
I did do a
how
thing.
How about that Game of Thrones ending? I'm sorry, the end credits. How much Game of Thrones that was. It's like Filoni's taken everything he loves. If you watch the end credits, they do like the music is exactly like Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah,
and it does like the line in the stars. Moving. I'm like, holy shit!
Well, dude, the first 3 scenes was basically homages. The first scene was Revenge of the Phantom Menace, where the people board the thing, except they're bad Jedi instead of good. The second one was Indiana Jones. The second scene was Indiana Jones, and the third one was an homage to that Star Trek flick.
There's a lot of lines too. Like she says, when it's like, let me show you our identification. And then he says, we're no Jedi. Like, you could tell he's using lines.
Yeah.
And then the homage where the little probe droid is following Sabine, and that is a direct correlation to Phantom Menace, where Maul gets the notification that they're there on Tatooine. Yeah. So, I mean, he's obviously a super fan, and I do appreciate, like, you could see, like, shots are similar, and he's using lines from that we're kind of familiar with.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm excited. I think the end
He's
of
kind
the
of a prequel throwback guy, though, huh? Like, we get geeked up.
Oh, there's a lot more prequel throwbacks.
That's
than
why it's a mental exercise, which I'm trying to get over, because, again, my baggage from the prequels is because they were executed so poorly. The concept of the storyline and the timeline wasn't necessarily the fundamental issue. I think the same story outline. I could totally do without the politics and the clones and all that convoluted. But I think if you just took that 3-story arc and put it in the hands of a better writer, the prequels
and
could
better
have been,
actors.
Yeah, so it's hard for me to detach the prequels from the way in which they're poorly executed. And this show is laying that really bare to me, which is that. Yeah. Try to get over the way the prequels were executed and not just let anything that like pulls from prequel imagery or prequel dialogue references, don't just on its face go straight to fuck no, this is bad, it's prequels, because that is my instinct. That my
me
gut
too.
response
I had to
is like
catch myself.
No. I don't want to see it looks too prequel-y. But again, if I set it aside and it requires an exercise to do so,
there are
most of the scenes rewarded me for that while watching this, for the most part.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Because
I do wonder if, as it goes on, the reason it might also stay good, or dare I even allow my optimism to go to the degree of entertaining the idea that it gets better, whatever we do or don't think about Filoni, what I appreciate about it so far is that it's written and directed by the same person. And I do think that part of what maybe has been a problem throughout some of these series is too many fucking cooks in the kitchen, which doesn't allow for someone's creative vision to come through. And maybe for all of our beef with Filoni, it's better when you just let him go full Filoni and not let him have to go through
direct that Vader scene at the end of Rogue One. That was he directed that fucking probably one of the best Vader scenes in that was him. He didn't direct I know he didn't direct every single episode of this series. Yeah. I know he didn't direct the second one.
But if he's making all the overarching decisions,
he's there. You know he's there the entire time.
Maybe
watching.
We, I don't want to speak for you guys, maybe I'm going to be pleasantly surprised, and maybe this is the series that makes me soften on my Filoni cynicism.
Yeah.
I mean, he is a talented dude. About him. He's just got different philosophies than us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Different ideas. You know what I mean? Things that excite Filoni don't really, we're darker. We prefer to like lean to the darker Empire Strike Back sort of stuff, and he's a little bit lighter and airier and optimistic than we are.
I mean, he did cook up the Clone Wars with George Lucas. So he did spend a lot of time with George Lucas.
Make no mistake, George signed off on all that shit.
Yeah. Well, George also invented the prequel. So what I'm saying is, my opinion, I hear that, I'm like, I wish Filoni had done it without George Lucas. Like, George Lucas, God love him, is a problem when it comes to the stories and the details. Like, motherfucker created the world, and he also fucked it up royally. Yeah. So for all our bitching about Filoni, we should be bitching about George Lucas. He made 3 atrocious movies and set us down the dark path that forever dominated our destiny for anything outside of the original sequels. I mean, this guy sucks outside of what he made.
It's true.
He was not a competent director by the time he got to the fucking clone.
It's interesting.
The clones.
Yeah.
If he, because it would have been interesting how we felt about Star Wars if George directed Empire.
Oh.
Well, he made a fucking best decision.
I think it would have been a totally different.
And handed it off to a director that dealt with interpersonal relationships,
characters.
Yeah, the most complimentary thing you can say about George Lucas on Empire and Jedi is that he had the wherewithal to not do it himself.
Yeah.
That's the most complimentary thing you can say about him.
Yeah.
I will say I thought the acting was pretty good based by Star Wars standards. I don't know that it was like, I don't ever watch a Star Wars movie or story and expect to get Oscar nominations for the acting and or aside. So I thought that those who were there did a pretty good job in the context of that. I felt like,
I'm so down with the Ahsoka character and the way she's handling that character.
Rosario Dawson's
I was about to say she
top level. She's it's hard to do much better than Rosario Dawson on every level. She's great. She's
the only thing that sort of weirds me out a little bit, and I can totally be positive, like you, Paul. Sabine just altogether is just Filoni fucking wet dream. It's like the hair, the fucking everything, like even the music choices and the way she was introduced. And it's not horrible, but this is that's a character that's basically birthed off a cartoon.
Yeah. I'm making an exercise and trying to dismiss small things that flash that I think are a little hokey and take me out of it because I want to like it. But it was a little easy the way this whole why don't you take her back on as a blah blah blah. It's like she's not ready. Well, how do you know when she's ready? Right. She'll know. 2 scenes later, I'm ready.
It's
like, okay, well that was.
It's a cartoon, and I actually think he's going for it. I think it's bright. It's and I think once I accepted that, it was kind of like, well, this is a choice. This is a stylistic choice that he's going for, and I could jump on board with it. I mean, I did
it's an extension of the Rebels.
I enjoyed Rebels, and I enjoyed the characters, and the Sabine absolutely acts like a cartoon character, kind of over the top rebel. There's no reason why she should have had to take that ball back to her, or the map back to her place. When I understand wanting, but there's just the obvious signs of rebellion in her. Yeah,
she's basically like a basement, neckbeard dweller person, that's really into animes, Wet Dream.
Yes.
Yeah, she's got cool hair. She's into graffiti. She likes she doesn't listen to Star Wars music. She's got it's a little bit more rock and roll.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I really don't dislike her. But it was the one thing that was like, wow, this is a little Vespa gang-ish.
I was pleasantly surprised, though, that by the end of the 2 episodes, I'm a little bit invested in the dynamic between Ahsoka and Sabine.
Oh, yeah.
Not a ton, but their history and the sort of and I think this is why I thought about the acting. I think it was done well
because Rosario Dawson can fucking emote.
Yeah, exactly. I think the emotive nature of how they put the dynamic on screen worked for me. Some of the music cues emotionally were helpful, like the string swells when they're having emotional conversations. It's not rocket science, but it worked. So I'm not. Let's put it this way. Yeah. After 3, I did make a mental note because the last time we had a new series with new characters to try to get into, of course, was The Mandalorian, and I will say, it is striking how when you have facial expressions on the character you're supposed to care about, you do I found myself more emotionally invested in the Ahsoka character right away because of the human emotion nature of it. And I do think that it's not necessarily a criticism of The Mandalorian, because ultimately I think it's a testament to its success that in spite of the fact that you never get to see the main characters express any emotions, you still care.
Yeah.
But it does help. It helps.
She's doing it with subtlety. Which is great. If you don't really know, even I don't know, I didn't watch, but basically her character has been through a lot of trauma, and you can kind of feel that with her. And she's doing such a great job in a Star Wars fucking film. Her best friend is basically a sociopath that murdered a bunch of people. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you can kind of feel that she's been through some shit. Which is in a fucking Star Wars, a cartoony, she is basically the gravity that's holding this thing from completely falling apart.
So here's the thought and a question. I watched, maybe mistakenly, which I think I'm going to not do anymore. Last night after it was over, granted, I was baked out of my gourd at this point, but I went IGN did one of these 16 minutes of everything you need to know about the backstory, and it kind of some person guides you through all the animated incarnations, and I pulled from her being born and one of those Tales of the Jedi. I didn't. There were things about Ahsoka. I didn't even know these things existed until I watched this. Show. I'll send you the recap, Curtis. So you can. I'll send it to you guys. Maybe we'll post it in the comments so people can know what it is that I watched later. I learned some things, but what was interesting was it's pretty clear based on her backstory it's not just what you were saying, Curtis, about like, yes, the emotional weight of her friend being a sociopath who murdered all these people. She, in theory, is one of the most powerful Jedi ever.
Well, that's good to know
the
because
ones
she
that
is
we know
whooping
and have
tons of
met,
ass.
like cruising around and in the same circles as Yoda and fucking Mace Windu and all these motherfuckers that were around, and Obi-Wan and Anakin, and she was like a super tight pal with them. So it did sort of help me realize like she is not just a random Jedi who's still around. She's like a known amongst even the Jedi. She is a badass. She is like a weathered, seasoned veteran with known strong abilities and has fucking seen some shit. Now, the breakdown was a fucking, like, I put my head in a blender. It's too much information. It's convoluted. It immediately, because I watched the episodes and I was like, well, maybe I should go back. And then I watched this recap. I was like, nope, too much and too much to know. I can tell already that half of this shit I fucking am not going to like. You know, it was like mildly interesting to see some of the context, but it was definitely going to be a Randy Jackson, that's going to be a no for me, dog kind of moment.
Yeah.
But again, I say that not to shit on it because I am encouraged that I might actually benefit from not going back and doing all that. Yeah. And as long as Filoni does enough emotive flashbacks, I'm not unable to be connected emotionally to these new characters, taking them at brand new with no knowledge of the past. Yeah. It's possible. Yeah. If he stays on course and gives me enough little like breadcrumbs along the way to fill in the gaps of the past.
I think he's handling it pretty fucking well.
I mean, he did that with the Ahsoka when he said, she said, well, Anakin never got to finish my training. And then she goes on to say, I left the Jedi and I left the Order and all that.
I like that. I like her droid, though. Y'all like her droid?
Oh, he's in Rebels.
I like that he's kind of like a grounded droid. You don't see, usually the droids are like the comic relief, and I like that they flip that to he is a little bit more of a traditionalist.
It's fine. The only thing I feel kind of, he's
Paul don't like the droid.
No, the droid's fine. I just think it's strange that in the context of every droid we've ever met, he has some sort of weird like French sounding name. Like what's his name?
Oh, really? What's his name?
Like Lavoie or Lacroix?
I don't know.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, this dude, I gather that this guy is from the like temple, right? Isn't this dude like kind of from like the old school?
Yeah,
like
he helps
order?
train Padawans, and like he kind of helps guide.
Really?
Like they fly the ships, and or according to, I think they're definitely in Clone Wars, and I know that character is in Rebels.
See, now this is a moment. It's like that's interesting. However, I don't think I need to know that to let that droid still work for me as a character, and that's fine.
I didn't know that.
There's a point at which where there will be things that if I take in all of the previous nuggets that exist out there, that will be annoying. And so while that information is interesting, if every single character has this whole big backstory, it feels like a landmine for me psychologically. Yeah. A landmine field is what I mean. That if I start going tromping around through the fields of all the previous information that I've never walked in before, that there's plenty of places I could step where I'm like, what the fuck? And if I just stay on course and stay the fuck away from all these fields and just give
you don't want to fuck with those
just let Filoni serve it up to me as though I'm new. I don't know. I hope I hope it works. It might end up being great.
He has actually handled the character every time she's turned up on screen, especially like her introduction in Mandalorian, turned up on screen in real life, in live action. Yeah. He's handled it fucking very well. Yeah.
Curtis,
even
what did you
that
think
one
about the
like
shots?
spin-off on Boba Fett, the shots.
Just like cinematography as a whole.
Cinematography as a whole is good. It is bright. I find that the green, remember the first time we saw the green alien was in Return of the Jedi when she was Jabba the Hutt's slave.
Yeah.
First of all, I'd like to give her I guess a lot of her people from her race do end up being like sort of like dancers. So I think that's cool that she's a general. And secondly, I don't think lighting that character, that breed of alien in bright light works for me.
Same.
No.
It's just basically green makeup and a headdress.
Yeah.
Ahsoka works fucking great though for me. Ahsoka's makeup works great for me. I'm not sitting there thinking that she wears makeup. But the green alien race only works in dark light for me. Yeah. I thought the CG on the ships have been great.
Yeah.
And cinematography is pretty actually. It's kind of old school. They don't move the camera when you don't really have to.
Yes.
It's kind of old school Star Wars.
That's what I was wondering. That's what I was getting at. I was curious if you picked up on that. I felt the same way. I was like, oh, this actually feels, from a shot choice standpoint, pretty consistent with original trilogy framing.
Yeah,
right?
What's the word when you're kind of reserved? It's like more, I guess, I don't want to say, maybe it's traditional, but I like that the camera doesn't move a lot in the original trilogy. It's actually just because George didn't really fucking know how to move the camera. But like Spielberg, right. If you ever the master of moving the camera is Spielberg.
Of course, yeah.
He only does it when it means something, and when he does it, it's fucking brilliant. But George does this more like, I'm gonna keep it more locked off, and this is kind of gonna be the thing. And it looks like Filoni did an homage to that, and I fucking love that. I like that. I like that. Just in what threw me off in a lot of the newer series is the fact that they would go handheld or move the camera and more of a Marvel style, which is like very glitzy. Yeah, Obi-Wan. I didn't really love the camera movement in Obi-Wan at all.
No,
but, I do think that Filoni is a diehard. He loves Star Wars, so you can't really fucking slide a dude for that. And he's smart. He just got different values in us in some ways.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I think it's the one thing. It's how about they can't keep a prisoner in these new series?
For fuck's sake, with the prisoners.
Right.
And also, to your point earlier, CG, about in theory, this is during a time when there's Lando and Han and Leia and Luke, and they should be like the top dogs of running the. I guess that's the question. I would love to know, and maybe someone that knows better can chime in and tell us how many years from Return of the Jedi. Because I will say,
that's a good
all this talk
question.
of a new Republic and senators implies that it's not like 3 years, but maybe more like 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
To go from the Death Star 2 exploding to an entire new government with a series of representatives in place implies a bit of a gap in between.
Yeah.
So that makes
like
it
9
easier
years,
to swallow for maybe why we're not seeing them, because they just might be busy doing other stuff. But if this prisoner is so important, meaning she's the bridge to Admiral Thrawn that everyone knows in theory,
and she's also like a space witch.
Yeah, but also she's on this not small ship with this not high-ranking guy on the bridge who's running the show.
Let him on board.
If she's so important, why is she just floating around randomly on this ship? Shouldn't she be in some high-security thing in the government headquarters for the New Republic? Right?
Oh, yeah.
Why is she just cruising around able to be boarded? She should be in whatever the equivalent of fucking Alcatraz is for the New Republic, right?
Same thing
also,
with
that
Moff
captain
Gideon,
shouldn't have let anyone on, right?
No,
right,
CG? That was dumb. Yeah.
Akbar would not have done that. He'd been like, this is a trap.
Yeah.
Akbar, some sort of fucking trap.
It does seem...
I'm assuming they're going to mention these characters. I would be happy if they don't show them, but I do think... See them. But I do feel like he's smart enough to mention.
Yes.
Because we know who would be... Because I'm assuming... Because shit doesn't hit the fan for Luke Skywalker in the sequels till I'm trying to think about the scene where he's standing over Kylo Ren and he should have chopped that fucker in half. I mean, it had to be 15, 16? So he didn't leave... go onto his little island for at least 15,
just by pure
16
visuals
years.
Of how they depict him in that flashback, he looks 20 years older at least from when we see him in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, 30, I think, doesn't the sequel start 30 years after
got that
Return
shoe
of the
polish
Jedi?
and that beard.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming it's 20 years is when Luke says, I'm out of here.
Okay.
But then, of course, we see in the Boba Fett episode, Ahsoka and Luke are just hanging out, and and maybe that's just what Luke's focusing on is just. But then again, he only had Grogu, and there's nobody else around, so it's an interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if Filoni mentions these characters because by all counts they're in charge.
Yeah, I
don't want to see them.
Yeah, I don't want to see them either.
They would be invested.
I don't want to see them.
Yeah, they could make comments like, "Oh, General Calrissian is out on the blah blah blah," so we're gonna go.
Yeah,
if they want to do that,
mention, don't show.
Yeah, right.
Like if Leia turned up on a hologram, I think that's a good way to handle it.
Yes,
that could be a thing
because she's super in charge. Like
Leia's like, "Do you want me to talk to my brother about this shit?" And she's like, "Nah, I got this." I think that's how I would handle it.
Yeah, I think it would be better to mention but not show. But you
don't
can't
got this.
ignore.
Shit always gravitating towards the fan. What were you saying, Chris?
Well, it's just like I'd rather them mention but not ignored because I can't ignore.
You can't ignore it because this is obviously a fucking problem.
Yeah, we also have to remember we loved the first. I'm not trying to I'm very excited for the next episode of this show. But we have to remember we were all on board of Kenobi with the.
I was on board, dude.
The first 2 episodes of that.
We were.
Oh yeah, remember
we were
the first
the
Kenobi?
place.
They did a 2-part release, and we were like, "I'm into this, totally into this."
Well, we were scared, and we were like, "Holy shit, they didn't blow it."
Yeah,
that made us.
But I do think this is different. I do think it looks better. It feels like Star Wars, like you said, those clean. Solid shots like when they boarded the ship and it's the hallway and you see the rebel guys just like getting shot or
it's bright as shit.
It's cool.
But even when they went to Cloud City, which is kind of a bright place, they still handled it like in a way more like I don't know how to explain it, man.
I will say it looked, Curtis, I'm curious if you felt this way as well. To me, it looked more expensive than Obi-Wan did.
Yeah, they are fucking handling the budget very well. The interior sets are great.
That's what I mean. You're right. I don't know about the exteriors, but the interior sets looked more high budget and more inspired than Obi-Wan's did.
Definitely.
You notice that when they were watching the hologram, I forget what exactly they were doing with the hologram, but I think it's the same briefing station that they briefed for Death Star 2.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
And then it was like Luke or Han was there. Lando was there and Leia was there, and then Luke turns up and then he's like, "I'm gonna come with you guys as well."
Hey guys,
I would love to go down there and turn myself into to the Empire. Like a fucking
let me
crazy
fuck
person.
this up.
I have a question that I remember making a note of to ask. Who the fuck is this random masked other individual with the third
Inquisitor?
lightsaber? Is that
it's
what that
obviously
is?
An Inquisitor.
Oh yeah, that's
anytime you see that double hilt circular lightsaber, that's an Inquisitor.
Okay, so this is one of the sticking points where it gets into tricky for me because I don't know fuck all about the Inquisitors because I didn't watch
I don't
any
know
of
where
this
the
shit.
fuck they
all
came
I know
from.
about the Inquisitors is from the bullshit Obi-Wan series.
Yeah.
So
I think you know as much as I do.
So
they're in the Clone Wars. They and they're in Rebels. But yeah, that's they're only other mentioned in Kenobi and the cartoons.
But eventually, the idea is that Kylo Ren is like the leader of the Inquisitors, right?
Yeah.
Well, that was the Knights of Ren, which I honestly don't even know what the fuck they are either.
I don't fucking know. This is where it gets dark for me because Star Wars is not supposed to be complicated. And if I can't,
it's not.
If after all, look at us, we're grown men with a Star Wars podcast, and if I don't understand the difference between the Inquisitors and the Knights of Ren, then somebody somewhere's fucking up because this is not Star Trek or Game of Thrones. It's supposed to be Star Wars and relatively fucking simple.
Well, the Inquisitors are supposed to be Jedi hunters. And this is why I didn't like seeing them in this series, is because I loved the kind of mystery of those two, of Balin and his apprentice, where you don't quite know. So I was like, why is this
that dude
Inquisitor
may or may
rolling
not
with
be an
these
Inquisitor.
cats?
Maybe he's right.
That's true.
No one knows who this
That's what I'm
Inquisitor
saying.
is.
Who is this motherfucker? Because you're right, CG. I was pleasantly surprised they came up with a good explanation for this guy and this girl, the apprentice and the master. It's like, all right, that's actually a pretty good explanation.
Too.
I can get on board for that. And then all of a sudden, there's this third, like Cobra Commander looking motherfucker with a, you know what I'm saying?
He does look like a Knight of Ren, though, doesn't he?
Well, at first I was like, "Oh wait, it's a droid." It's like,
maybe
no, it's
it is
a droid, and then it's like, but he never says a word. I never see the person's face. He is cruising around with these two others. Like, what? The idea that they would just throw in a lightsaber wielding character with zero fucking mention of any kind of who that is, to me, is a massive fail. It's not.
Yeah,
I think we're going to find out. I think there's going to be a big reveal, dude.
I hope so.
I think it's someone she could kill off the gun. Because the thing about these 10-part series
no one knows where Jar Jar is.
This would be a great movie. It's just that I don't know if y'all felt this way. I felt pretty good last night, and then I rewatched them again, and I found myself like fast forwarding because it's just the scenes move kind of slow. Like I like the scenes, I like the information I'm getting, but it's like with these 10-part series, it's like there's so much time to kill. Like I feel like it's like they kind of drag.
Well,
like if this was a movie, it would probably just kind of be a little more.
I'm curious. It's interesting because I was going to ask about that, but just between us girls,
I didn't feel it as much this time.
Yeah, well, just between us girls and all the people who may or may not watch this on the internet, I never usually start these shows that I want to actively engage with high, but I definitely got real stoned before I watched last night. And
nice.
I'm only saying that because there were some moments where I felt what you described, CG, where I was a little like, this is going on for a long time. So I didn't have time to watch them again this morning, but I did turn them on. Like I was sitting at my desk working this morning and I had it on the iPad like next to me, just kind of playing in the background. And some of that stuff didn't feel as draggy when I wasn't high the next day. And so it reinforced my like, go back to your usual protocol. You're sober as a judge when you watch it for the first time. You can do plenty of stoned viewings later, but first viewing sober. Don't like go into it with your like childlike Star Wars uninhibited, unaffected brain and see how it grabs you, because it didn't bother me as much this morning. I will say that.
Interesting.
I had moments last night. I was like, is this getting boring? Do I not give a fuck? And then I did that thing in my head, even while stoned, where I was like, is it that I don't care, or am I just real high?
You know what's funny? I had the opposite.
Interesting.
Thing. I watched it and I was totally, and then when I watched it again, I was like, fast forward. So that's
fascinating.
I don't know about the rewatchability of it, but
there's a whole separate tangent we could do about marijuana and how it affects your. Well, I mentioned that because part of my thing and I will try to resist the temptation to go into a whole extra 45 minutes just on weed, but I don't love, from my experience with getting stoned at 41 years old, which is very different than when I was like 16. I don't like to be super stoned when I'm taking in art for the first time. I only like to listen to...
That's how I like to take in art.
Like music and movies, I love to experience stoned, but only ones that I have long-standing relationships with and already love.
I'm the exact same way, Paul.
I find that it makes me more critical. If I'm taking something
rather
in
be
for
on
the first time...
an upper, like coffee.
Yeah,
for
it's
the
the
first
same
time.
reason... To be honest with you, it's the reason I don't like to get high and go be around a bunch of people, because never outwardly, but in my head,
that's a nightmare.
I will analyze people and myself in a way that's not fun, and I find myself doing that with something in a new Star Wars series where I'm bringing all my nerd baggage to it. It's not the place for that. I need to just need to think less and try to. For me, when I watch Star Wars, the goal is to get back to being a 10-year-old kid sitting Indian style, you know what I mean? Like on the floor at story time. And I want to just be transported like a little kid to another galaxy far, far away. And I'm just totally wrapped up in the storytelling that I'm not even thinking about anything else. That's the goal.
Well, that's what it does for me when I do it. It gets me in that, like, I sit in the bed and I'm just sitting there like, okay, all right, here we go. And then I see, like, I love how it had, like, the old
fun to see that crawl come up, and then that.
So,
I was about to say the crawl.
I wanted to ask about the crawl. You guys liked the crawl.
I'm not mad at the
I knew
crawl.
it was coming.
I liked that there was a crawl, and then I liked it, but I also liked that it wasn't the
same
actual
crawl?
Star Wars crawl.
Yeah,
I know they're saving the Star Wars crawl for movies. I think they're going to actually do the old school crawl when they do movies.
Yeah.
But I did like it, and it was good because I think it was necessary to have the crawl because we got some good information out of it.
Yeah, I was relieved.
Hell, dude, there's a lot of fucking backstory to this shit.
I
was
think
relieved
it is
for that. I needed it as a guy who didn't watch Rebels. Like I needed that to know what the fuck I was getting into.
It was cool and red. It was ominous.
My first moment was like, oh, we're gonna do a weird crawl. Like I will say, in the first maybe just the 120 seconds of all of it, I was like, oh no, this feels like high budge fan film. What is this? By 15 minutes in, I was good. Once I got the context, I was on board, and I was grateful for the crawl, and I was like you, Curtis. I was glad for the information, but also glad they didn't make it the traditional yellow one, that they did something different to make sure that they knew that we recognize that this is different and not the same as a Star Wars film. So in
I
the
appreciate
end,
that.
I'm on board. But
Yeah, they
in
couldn't
the
have done
moment,
the yellow one. That would have been blasphemy.
That would have
Yeah.
been stupid. That's
Yeah.
what I thought they were going to do because I saw a post before watching that Ahsoka was going to have the crawl, and in the article they had the OG yellow or like yellow font, orange font, or yellow font, and I was like, please don't do that.
Yeah.
So I was pleasantly surprised, and I think it is. If Filoni had access to the music, he would use it.
100%.
Like he's such a fan, and
Totally.
like just seeing the shots and
Yeah.
the lines he's using, like the Return of the Jedi. He's no Jedi, and it's like you were right about one thing. We're no. Even the way he said it
Yeah.
was like try to act. Yeah,
It's smart. That was good shit. I mean, I will say, for all my bitching about Filoni, you're right. You said it, CG, at the top of the episode. The biggest compliment I can make about the series so far is that it is clearly made by a guy who shares our love for Star
Yep.
Wars. That doesn't mean I'm
Loves
going to love it when it's done or that I'll agree with every choice. But at the end of the day, it does feel like it's being made by someone who loves this shit. And that they're
cares.
having fun.
And
And that
cares.
they're having
Yeah.
fun. Like, you can tell when he's
Yeah.
writing that line, "We're no Jedi." Like, you can almost see this smirk on his face when he's writing
no
it for the
Jedi.
first time.
Let
like,
me
oh,
show
yeah.
you my identification.
Yeah.
like
And I love that.
Like those.
That's
kind of things.
great.
Yeah, I
That-
did too. I
that's
was
great.
totally on board with that.
And you're 100%
But
right.
It sucks that guy died. That Ray, the guy who played Balin, passed away.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, he passed away. I mean, they finished filming the
Wait,
series,
that dude,
but
the dude that played like the main
Balin.
space wizard?
Yeah, he
No
passed
shit.
away.
So,
What
well,
the fuck?
also, spoiler alert, I guess he dies.
Yeah,
Holy
I mean,
shit,
yeah, well,
did
I
you
don't know if
guys
he
ever
I
watch
don't know
that
if he
movie?
dies in this series because they finished filming. It was long after they finished filming.
How'd he die, dude?
I'm not sure, but I just know that's why it says after the first episode for our
yeah.
friend
Did
Ray.
you guys ever
I-
watch that HBO show Rome?
No, but
I
I just
mean, yeah,
I only know him from Punisher Warzone,
Dude,
which
Rome-
you guys need to watch. that
Rome
movie.
is fucking good. It's like
Yeah.
Game of Thrones before Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
Oh hell
I
yeah!
remember Brom being
I'm gonna
good.
watch that.
I mean, there's
that's
titties
re-
in it and everything.
There you go. That's really interesting, CG. I did not know that. I had no idea that was
it
the
was
case.
it's kind of because he's kind of my. I just love his energy in this
well,
show.
I agree, which is
He's
why
good.
it's
He's a
little-
great actor.
It's a bummer
Oh, yeah,
to hear
and-
that because he's one of
and
the
that
best
last
things
thing
about
is-
it so far.
Yeah, well, the truth, like, it's like, are you sentimental? So he's like, nope, I'm just speaking truth. How it's like, it would be a shame to have to, like, I just love the kind of mystery
Yeah,
of these.
totally.
This guy. And he's just, the way, I think Filoni is, you could tell by the way he's had the costume, he's made his shoulders very broad.
Yeah.
Kind of got a Vader kind of,
Yeah.
just stance, just because he's got like those,
Yep.
Got the hood.
big like shoulder pieces on
Yeah.
when he's walking
How
on the
badass
ship
was
when they're
Luke
going
when he
to
had
get
a
Morgan.
fucking hood on, rolling
Oh,
into
dude.
Jabba's palace?
Just so badass.
He choked
do you-
out a couple of dudes. Just for the
I
record.
hope-
yeah.
I hope that
The
doesn't
pig,
mean
the pig guards.
that whatever plan Filoni had, assuming it was one I would like, hope that doesn't mean that his story has to be affected by the actor's death.
Because it was after. It would suck.
I mean, obviously, they're not
I
going to
hope
tell
they
us
don't
that.
try to kill him with the fucking lightsaber because that is not going to work.
Is this? Do you think this 10-part series is it for Ahsoka, or do you think there's going to be more?
I mean,
know
let's
there's
put
the
it, let's
10-part
put it this
series.
way. If it goes really, really well, Disney's
They're
so
gonna keep it going.
they're going to get
No, they gotta
they're gonna
kill
have
it.
their boner
Well,
made of money is going to be so big that there's no way that they'll.
Golden
However,
boner.
at some point, there's going to be an awkward moment where, if to keep it going, the timeline is going to start to overlap with the sequel trilogy. And how will they explain
Yeah.
Ahsoka not being present in the sequel trilogy?
Well, the
they'll
same
have
way
to kill
they
her.
explained the reason she wasn't around in episode 3,
They have
4,
to kill Ahsoka. That's a good point.
6,
They would have
7,
They
8,
Keep
and 9.
going.
They just won't say
They
anything.
have to kill her. They have to kill Ahsoka before these sequels start because it doesn't
Well,
make sense that she's not mentioned and
Yeah.
now she's this huge high roller and then after she
Yeah.
has to be dead. The only way it works is that if it is Ahsoka is dead before the sequels start.
Because it
I
is the
thought she
case
died
when
in
we,
Rebels, dude. That's how much I know.
when we
Yeah.
meet Rey, isn't it mentioned very much so that the Jedi are completely gone outside of Kylo Ren at that
That's a
point?
good
Oh, yeah.
question.
Like in terms
The
of
only
non-evil
Leia's
force
the-
wielders, there's
the only one that
literally
knows how to
nobody.
do it is Leia. In
Or Luke.
that or Luke,
Yeah.
but in terms like Luke is gone, but in terms of that, the only one that is kind of present would be
It does
Leia.
kind of suck that Leia ended up being just this old chick in a dress. Like, it would have been cool.
Yeah.
Like, Leia was like, if Luke died, man, everyone was like, you know what? It doesn't
Carrie
matter.
Fisher as a badass Jedi would have been
Y'all be
fucking
careful
awesome.
what you wish for, because these motherfuckers have the technology to try to do that
They'll do
anyway
it.
right now during an Ahsoka series. Zool now lives with us, and unlike Billy
Hey,
Jack, he
Zool.
loves to bark at everything.
Absolutely.
I will say this. I am proud of our old asses for keeping an open mind and allowing
Yes.
ourselves to
Yeah.
create new neural pathways.
I'm always
even though
excited
we don't
that
want to.
we
Well said.
kind of, we're always kind of in the same ballpark. Like, as soon as you start, because I'm always so worried, I'm like, what if I love this and they hate?
He
But it's like, as
actually
soon as you
handled
started
this
talking,
very
I was
well.
like, I'm excited for the next episode. I'm actually
Again,
legitimately
I am
pumped
too.
for.
I am too. I feel like the only qualifier I'm going to keep making is it is requiring an active exercise for me to shelve some of my own preconceived notions. However, so
That's
far,
probably healthy for us at this
I
age.
have been rewarded for making that effort in the first 2 episodes, and that was not
Yes.
what I expected. And so ultimately, that's a win so far.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I'm not looking
Definitely.
ever for it to fill the same places that the original Star Wars trilogy ever did.
Nothing
I'm
wrong.
just like looking to not be completely fucking offended and to have a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so far, so good.
Yeah.
And yeah, so far, so goddamn good.
Yeah.
I have softened to Filoni a little bit just because watching, I'm like, man, this guy obviously
Well, he's one of us.
He loves Star Wars,
Yeah.
and as much shitting as I've done on this guy, and as much as we don't agree with, I look at watching this, I was like, he is such a fan, and I can't help but
Well, who
love
knows,
that.
dude? He might have just
Yeah.
like got a job at Lucasfilm, and then like Luke, and then George just hands him a bunch of crazy shit, and he had to do his best with it.
Well, I got some
Yeah.
stories here. I thought you might want to. I had some ideas.
Yeah.
What if,
I have some,
Jar Jar Binks comes back and
I'd like to have. I think Jabba should have a bunch of brothers and sisters, and I think
That
Filoni
is a
should
danger.
actually-
Yeah,
gay.
that's a danger spot though, because if he is a prequel lover and this series goes well, and he's like,
He does
well,
love
then
the prequel.
I can have fun bringing back some prequel characters. It will go to shit real fast for me. Like so,
Hey,
he won't
listen,
bring
Jar
back
Jar's
Banks.
alive. Jar Jar is
he won't
technically
do
alive.
it. He will not bring Banks back. He can't. He will. He's gonna do it. He's
Save
gonna
Binks.
fucking
Bring
do
him
it.
back. Fuck it, dude. I'd
Dude,
love to see
Binks
it.
is all over
I-
the Clone Wars.
If he's smart,
cartoon.
he'll know. Even if he wants to, he'll know it'll be so divisive that he'll run the risk of something. Like right now, he's created a scenario where even assholes like me, seemingly so far, are on board, and he'll lose us if he does that.
The only way to
If
do
he's
it is
smart.
to have him in the background of something and never mention his name.
He shouldn't
Like
even do
someone
that.
would find
Maybe
it.
Jar Jar's head on a
It's-
pike somewhere.
Yeah, it's too much of a hot button issue for assholes like me. Like
Dude.
if I even just see that prick in the background of a scene, I'm fucking out. It pulls me out of it so far, so fast
it's bad. It's
that
bad,
it'll
dude.
take
It's,
an effort to get back in.
Like Sabine
And
wasn't.
no disrespect to Emmett Barley, he was great. He did exactly what he was told to do.
Sabine
the man
wasn't.
just did what he was told to do.
Yeah.
Sabine wasn't
that,
Jar Jar level bullshit, but that was my
No.
Jar Jar moment. Like actually, if I episode 1, go back and watch it, everything's fucking kind of working. I'm like, oh, this is different. Then fucking Jar Jar shows up.
Yeah.
And up until Sabine, I was like pretty fucking stoked. I'm not unstoked because of Sabine, but that's when he kind of was like, all right, man,
Yeah.
my name is Dave Filoni.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the characters that I didn't like in Rebels was
Who likes
Sabine
to
and
party?
Ezra were like my two. They were just a little too much in that, and everyone else in that series was pretty grounded.
Yeah.
Because even the other Jedi in Rebels,
Yeah.
Caleb Dune was a cool Jedi. Like he was blind.
Oh, is
and
that
it
the
was
guy
just
that got
kinda-
blind?
Yeah, he was blind and then dies. He dies.
I will say that I enjoyed the
but
first
they were
season
more
of
grounded.
Rebels.
But Sabine and Ezra were my two least favorite characters in that
Yeah.
series.
Well,
Do you
shit,
think?
y'all.
Here,
We'll see.
one last thing. I know we got to jump. One last thing.
No.
We don't need to go
We
on
could
about-
keep talking all day. I do have to
we
pee at
think
some point.
that Ezra is going to be a prominent character in the show, and then in the same way they get Thrawn, because we know Thrawn's on screen because we've seen it from the trailers. Do we think they're just going to bring back this Ezra character and he's going to be important
Well,
to the
if
Ahsoka
they do,
series?
he's gonna have to die before the sequels start.
Got
I mean,
it.
because
Got it.
if
Good
there's
answer.
another Jedi rolling around,
Well, at
'cause
least he
makes sense.
should die.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's a good point. Okay.
He should
That's a
die.
good point.
I hope they
That's a good
don't.
point.
I hope
Yeah.
they don't.
I hope they don't too.
I really don't, because I don't like Ezra.
It's
I think
fine
he'll
that
show
the
up,
existence
man.
of Ezra is a source of emotional consternation for the characters. Like, that's enough for his presence to be a background reason for them to feel things. But I don't need to see that motherfucker in the game.
even seeing the little like message she had from him was like, ugh.
Yeah.
Someone's got to die.
I really disliked the Ezra character in the Rebels.
Yeah.
It just annoyed me to no end.
Okay.
Just because it was just annoying to see a Jedi that powerful rolling around the galaxy when in a time where they're supposed to be not.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, it diminishes Luke Skywalker, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, but we're fucking well
There was
past.
space-
We're
did you
well
guys notice
past
the
that
space
fucking.
whales in
I'm
episode
just trying
2
to
of
have
this?
some fun. There was a
What
space
whales?
There was space whales when
There's gonna be a
Balin
space whale,
was,
y'all.
it was like the first scene, and he looks up when he's talking to Morgan after he gets the ball, puts it in the little thing. You could hear him, and you could see him just floating in the sky.
Yeah. No, they're in the
whales.
trailer. They're in the trailer.
And they were in episode 2 at the beginning for one of the first scenes.
Well,
of
what's
this
interesting
series.
then is that for people like me who have never watched Rebels, I did not pick up on a space whales reference. I don't know if that's
Well,
good
maybe
or
they
bad.
just
No,
keep them
there
in the
you could just see
background.
him lightly floating in the clouds. Go back when Balin. It's like I think it's the first shot of episode 2 in Ahsoka.
Yeah.
Where Balin puts the map in
Yeah,
the,
in the little-
thing, and then he looks up. It does a shot where he's looking up to the sky, and you could see the space whales floating in there. So they're there. They didn't take long to get some whales,
Okay.
but I'm optimistic, but hesitant because I was optimistic in Kenobi, and that turned into a dumpster fire. But
It did.
we'll see.
Yeah.
10 episode series is pretty long.
It is long. But all told, I'm gonna say it. Cautiously optimistic, and dare
Yes.
I even say pleasantly surprised? Question mark.
Definitely. I mean, I'm excited, and that's my tale. Is like, am I excited to see what happens? And I legitimately I can't wait for the next episode.
I will say
which
this.
is always a good sign.
I'll say this again. I think I said it at the top of the episode. I am way more excited, exponentially more excited to see the third episode of Ahsoka than I was to see episodes 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 of season 3 of The Mandalorian.
Yeah, Mandalorian season 3 was a dumpster.
That was so bad that this already feels better if I compare it to that. So,
Dude, Mandalorian fucking completely jumped the shark.
in terms of our
It's
last
terrible.
experience with new Star Wars material, which was one of the lowest moments of the whole franchise,
Oh,
that's
God.
good. So,
Tales
anyway,
will be written about how they fucking fucked that up.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm good to roll.
All right,
That's
I'm
all I
feeling
got.
good. Yep.
All right,
Hey,
next
listen.
week
All right, y'all.
we're gonna do this
Fuck
each
'em.
week. We're back, y'all.
We're back. Love it.
We're back in action. Should we blow this chip stand?
Yeah, punch it,
Absolutely.
Curtis.
And we're fucking out of here. That was fun.